A grieving widower escapes sorrow in the arms of a much younger woman.
I would say he put Teresa on a pedestal. She came before anything else.
He was very kind to her in the beginning, and she appreciated that.
But the gap between these May December lovers becomes a chasm.
She's always running and running and gone, that something might have been going on.
Call me Mom.
You're 3 years older than me.
Hey, don't talk to my daughter that way.
How are you my new mother?
Leave me alone!
And bridging that gap is lethal.
There's no easy way of saying it. They were executed.
You don't know what evil looks like until you're face to face with it.
Love may be blind and marriage bliss, but divorce is murder. For many, the start of the millennium brings new hope for the future. But for 49-year-old Julian Lewis, it marks the end of happiness as he knows it. He loses his wife, Joyce, to chronic pancreatitis.
You're never prepared, you know. Mom had been sick pretty much our entire lives. It just got progressively worse as the time went on. It was extremely hard.
After nearly 28 years of marriage, Julian is shattered.
She was extremely important to him. I don't think anybody realized exactly how much of her life impacted him until we lost her. Dad didn't really cope very well at all. Dad stopped eating. He stopped sleeping. He basically just shut down.
For the first time in his life, the former military drill sergeant turned electrician loses control. Julian starts drinking.
Drinking to this extent was really out of the normal. Everybody has their coping mechanisms, but he didn't drink just a little bit.
At least he's not alone.
Dad! Supper's ready.
While Julian's oldest son, Jason, returns to the military in California after the funeral.
Hey, Dad.
Daughter Kathy and 23-year-old son, CJ, stick around.
I made you supper. It's your favorite.
I took over the household chores. I moved home to help take care of Dad.
With this kind of support, Julian is able to keep working.
Julian was a mechanic in Dan River Mills when it was still open here in Danville. He was very hardworking.
And in a roundabout way, it's through work that he finds a way out of his grief.
Hey, you got a light?
Through 31-year-old Teresa Wilson, a colleague 18 years his junior.
You're new here?
Yeah. Teresa. I'm a weaver.
Nice to meet you. Julian, electrician.
Over the coming days, they make a point of timing their smoke breaks to see one another.
Looks like our bad habits are synchronized.
You did say 2:15.
I guess it's our first date then.
I guess it is.
Julian would shower her with gifts and was very kind to her. So she responded as anyone would.
For Teresa, Julian offers the possibility of a stable relationship.
Teresa had been married very early when she was 16. She had 2 children as a result of it.
For Julian, Teresa is a breath of fresh air.
She's a lot younger. I believe that sort of made him feel like he was young again.
So young, they even go out dancing.
I just saw him one night at a nightclub a few months after Julian's wife, Joyce, had died.
You're right back.
All right, hurry on back.
You know, They were on the dance floor dancing, and Julian came up to me. I had just started dating his daughter.
Hey, I didn't expect to see you. My daughter here?
Boys' night out.
Well, let's keep it between us, okay?
I guess because shortly after her mother had died, she wouldn't take it too good. When you're first starting to date somebody, that type of holding hands or just little small things, it wasn't huge things.
I knew that he was dating, but I did not know that he was actually courting one particular person.
In fact, Julian and Teresa are no longer just courting, they're in love. Psychotherapist Stacy Kaiser and forensic psychologist Brian Russell have some concerns about where this secret romance is headed.
Julian is going through a grief period right now that renders him, in my opinion, really emotionally unavailable to form and really develop the kind of lasting relationship foundation that somebody would want if you were in Teresa's position.
The fact that Julian is keeping this relationship secret tells me a few things. Number one, he may be ashamed of it, knowing that people would think it's too soon after the death of his wife, or that people might judge the age difference. Because Julian has been grieving for the last 3 months, I think he views Teresa as an escape from all the pain. It's finally some lightness and some happiness in his life.
I think that he probably is a guy who is looking for a distraction.
2 months later, their relationship moves to the next level.
I found out about Dad and Teresa's relationship the day that he moved her in. It was June 14th, and I remember the date because that's my mother's birthday. I'd had surgery earlier in the week on my sinuses and my throat, so I was not able to speak at all.
Hon, I got something to tell you. This is my girlfriend, Teresa, and she's moving in.
Call me Mom.
You're 3 years older than me. How are you my new mother? That was my first introduction to her, and it was not very flattering at all. Teresa acted like she owned the place the minute she walked in.
There are other surprises in store.
She was married previously. She had 2 children. Her ex-husband had custody, and she had visitation.
14-year-old Christy and 11-year-old Ben will have regular visits.
Kathy. Because she makes me happy.
I didn't want my father to spend the rest of his life alone. I really didn't. I wanted him to find somebody that would love him and take care of him. She was not the type of person that I could see him spending years with. I didn't understand, what he saw when he looked at her.
Julian sees a partner, especially when it comes to religion.
Julian and Teresa and CJ went to church on a regular basis.
Teresa had always gone to church from her young days. She sang in the choir. She had tried to get Julian to go to church more. She was worried about his drinking from time to time and tried to help him reform, if you will.
Not only does Julian curtail his drinking, but he and Teresa grow close to another churchgoer, Robert Delaney.
He was a deacon at the church that Dad and Teresa were members of. So they saw him pretty much every weekend.
All right, we gotta go, baby doll.
All right. See you next Sunday.
Okay.
It isn't long before Julian pops the question.
They were happy. She treated him fine. He treated her fine.
Everybody is happy, except for Kathy.
I felt it was wrong from the very get-go.
And when the going gets tough, the marriage gets rough.
You will not speak to Teresa like that.
It was like only Teresa and her children existed.
It's just so nice to have a man around the house.
Trying to get along with Teresa is kind of like trying to wrestle a greased pig.
7 months after Julian Lewis's wife of 28 years dies, he marries Teresa Wilson, a woman 18 years his junior. But with Julian's 2 adult children living at home, it makes for a very crowded house. Especially because Teresa wants to spend more time with her own kids, 14-year-old Christy and 11-year-old Ben.
At first, it was not that often. I'd say maybe once a month, and it became more frequent as time wore on.
And the kids, especially Christy, take up a lot of space.
Her daughter was more of her, almost like best friend instead of daughter. The daughter was always looked like whatever she wanted, she got.
She was basically very disrespectful.
Oh my God. Oh, this is disgusting. Hey, I'm not eating this.
We do not speak that way in this house. You can sit back down.
Hey, don't talk to my daughter that way.
Teresa would react pretty much the way you think she would. That's not your child. You don't need to be doing that.
Come on, honey, we're gonna find something for you in the fridge.
Oh, we'll see about that, Teresa.
You will not speak to Teresa, my wife, like that. Not in this house.
It was like only Teresa and her children existed.
Oh, I see how it is.
She came before anything else, family-wise or anything.
Come on, Larry, let's go.
I would have stayed to take care of Dad and CJ if things had not become so difficult.
Sit down, honey.
But in a situation where there's so much drama and your nerves are tore up so bad, you have to make a decision.
Kathy's decision is to leave.
So she moved in with me, and shortly after that, we got married.
Now Julian can focus on Teresa, the new woman of the house.
Oh, what did I do to deserve you?
I have no idea.
If she had a specific food that she liked, he would stop and pick that up and bring it home for supper so she wouldn't have to cook.
So, I got you a couple of things, baby doll.
Bought her new clothes. I always took her out to eat.
Hey, thanks.
Give her spending money.
And I also got you this.
She loved jewelry, so he would stop and buy her jewelry.
He treated her like a queen. He kept her on a pedestal all the time. Whatever Teresa wanted, Teresa got.
Of course, everybody's happy when somebody buys something for them and gives them a gift, but in Teresa's case, that was particularly important. I think anytime she received approval from men, that was very, very important to her.
Dad did pretty well in the mill. His pay was probably the highest you could get, so she actually just quit her job at that point, and she never worked again.
It's perfect.
But bad news soon overshadows the newlyweds' bliss.
Hello? What happened? Where is she?
A stroke sends Teresa's mother into a coma.
All right, I'll be right there.
It was devastating to the family. Teresa had become one of the principal caregivers for her mother.
Honestly, I think Teresa loved her mother. I think she really did.
Julian supports his new wife, but he has his limits.
Here, drink this. Then it's time to go.
Not leaving.
Dad had been up probably for about 48 hours and had not slept. He'd been with Teresa all that time.
I said, it's time to go.
No.
Come on, Teresa. You're not being reasonable.
You're not being reasonable.
I am your husband, and you're coming with me.
I'm not gonna choose between the two of you. You can't make me, okay?
Fine.
Julian said, choose between your mother and me, and that was obviously a very painful episode in her life.
In times of crisis, couples either come together or break apart. And Teresa's mother's stroke is definitely a crisis. And so part of what we're seeing is this couple is being torn apart by that, and it doesn't bode well for their future.
Teresa's going through something very difficult. Julian doesn't seem that supportive. Now, it may be because he's sort of still depleted from the fact that just a while ago, he got done taking care of his wife who passed away, who had been sick for a significant period of time beforehand. But that goes back to my point that he wasn't probably ready to move into another relationship of this level of seriousness.
After 7 days, Teresa's choice is made for her. Her mother dies.
After that, they didn't talk about it anymore, and according to Teresa, he acted like it didn't happen.
It's a bad omen for what's to come. After the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, CJ, already a reservist, goes on active duty.
CJ felt like he needed to.
His room doesn't stay empty for long when big brother Jason comes home for a visit.
He had come in for Thanksgiving, but Dad was working a lot of overtime at that point. So that would leave Jason there frequently alone with Teresa.
That's when Jason sees the first signs of big trouble.
Oh, sorry, I'm in your way.
You're not in my way. You're right where you should be.
What do you mean?
It's just so nice to have a man around the house. With your father working all the time, I just get so lonely.
Basically, she told him, she said, your dad's gone. We've got the house to ourselves, and you can use me any way you want to. He said, we just don't do that in our family. You might do it in yours, but we don't do that in ours.
Hello, Kath. You won't believe what just happened.
Jason tells Kathy immediately, but not Julian. Sadly, he doesn't get the chance.
Dad's reaction to Jason's death was basically, he was stunned, he was lost. And it had to be really, really hard on Dad. Him and CJ, they just didn't have a way to deal with it.
In the coming weeks, Julian visits Jason's grave almost daily, and Teresa goes with him.
There were times when she wanted to visit her mother's grave, and there was some disagreement with Julian about that. It was very difficult for her to go through that because she would, in her own mind, have to choose between Julian and her mother.
A choice which sends them both tumbling into an abyss.
She said that he was perverted and wanted to have sex all the time.
As long as you followed the rules, did what you were supposed to do, you didn't incur his wrath.
Julian Lewis is heartbroken after the sudden death of his oldest son, Jason. While Teresa, his wife of 15 months, is still reeling from the passing of her mother. But there is a sliver of silver lining the cloud of misery.
Jason's life insurance policy was $200,000, so when Jason passed, Dad inherited $200,000.
And that, of course, provided him with the opportunity to purchase a piece of property.
5 acres of land and a brand new home.
All right, here we go.
It was 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, pretty decent sized living room, pretty decent sized kitchen for, just 2 people.
Jason's untimely death and his own upcoming tour inspires CJ to put his affairs in order.
This is back during the Gulf War and all. His lieutenant told everyone, like, if you're going to possibly be sent overseas, they strongly recommend everyone to get a will, so someone will be in charge of their items if something was to happen to them.
Dad was listed as beneficiary. Teresa was listed as secondary beneficiary in case Dad was incapacitated.
Even with the insurance payout, Teresa and Julian can't buy happiness. Teresa's health is not good.
Teresa suffered from endometriosis at one point, but she had had several surgeries to actually, combat that.
Here, baby doll.
She had a number of surgical procedures, and after each one of those, it caused her more pain. And all of those physical ailments led her to receive from various doctors prescription drugs for the pain.
Julian is concerned as much about her failing health as he is with her diminished libido.
Not now, baby.
I just miss you, is all.
She said that he was perverted and wanted to have sex all the time.
At first, Julian is understanding, but soon arguments fill the space in their new home.
Sometimes it would be something as stupid as if he left the toilet seat up. And then it was money, 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 money.
Good. You haven't left yet. Just about to step out.
Where are you going?
It's Sunday. Church. Can I have some money?
What do you need money for?
This is ridiculous. Need to get some groceries on the way home.
The $200,000 was put directly in Julian's bank account. What Julian wanted her to have, he would give it to her. He really controlled it very tightly, very closely.
Well, this should be enough. Better be home when I get back.
Teresa certainly felt as time went on that he was too possessive and too controlling of her, and I think she felt somewhat smothered by that.
And by Julian's suspicions of everyone, including their good church friend, Deacon Robert Delaney.
Julian had to work Sundays sometimes, so he didn't get to go to church, and Robert volunteered to pick Teresa and the kids up to take them to church.
I do know that they spent a lot of time together on the weekends that they shouldn't have spent. My father knew something wasn't right. He knew something was going on because she would disappear when he went to work. And when I say disappear, you couldn't find her. He even specifically bought her a cell phone and pager, and he couldn't reach her there.
What are you doing with Robert?
All right, I was at church.
All day?
Yeah! Will you just stop keeping tabs on me?
Why wouldn't you stop lying to me?
No, I've had
You're lying
off
to
my
me,
back.
Teresa.
And
Why
you
don't
are
you tell me what's going on?
Get leave me alone.
Usually when people seem to be controlling, it's because of anxiety. It's because they're worried about losing the other person. But in this case, it could actually be the opposite. It could be that Julian is starting to realize that maybe he never did have the deep attraction, deep connection with Teresa that he would have wanted to have like he had with his first wife.
Julian and Teresa's relationship isn't what it once was. She's not as attentive, and of course, he's making the leap of thinking to himself, well, gee, she spends a lot of time with Robert Delaney. I wonder if she's having an affair with him, and maybe that's why she's acting the way she's acting.
What Julian doesn't know is that everywhere she goes, Teresa catches the eyes of other men, including 21-year-old Matthew Schallenberger and 19-year-old Rodney Fuller.
Teresa met Schallenberger and Fuller at a retail store.
Well, she turned around, got to talking and flirting and giggling and laughing.
It's been really great chatting.
Yeah. It's good talking to someone young for a change. Not my cheap-ass husband.
If you want to keep talking to someone young, let me give you my number.
I'll give you mine.
Well, it wasn't long after that they called her, and that began the acquaintance.
She always wanted to be center of attention, so I'm sure she was feeling right good that two younger guys was paying attention.
As Teresa plays the field,
Kathy,
Julian starts to panic.
Hey, Dad. What's wrong?
Dad really looked just beaten down when he was telling me. He said, I don't know what, I'm stuck. I don't know what I'm going to do.
I think marrying Teresa was a big mistake.
Right.
But, getting a divorce could suck me dry.
Oh, Dad. I'm sorry.
I don't know what to do.
Well, you look like hell. Come on.
He was just trying to figure out a way to get out of it without losing everything he'd worked his whole life for.
Before Julian can figure that out, a distraction arrives 3 days before Halloween.
Surprise!
CJ came home unexpected.
How are you?
His orders had come down. He would be going about 3 months after his last visit here. He popped in to surprise Dad.
But father and son are in for another surprise. And it's anything but happy.
The heart's pumping, and there's nothing there to stop the blood flow.
It just didn't feel real.
As Julian and Teresa Lewis's 2-year-old marriage crumbles, Julian's anguish is lightened by a surprise visit from his son, CJ. But 2 days later, the quiet of the Virginia night is broken.
It was real early on October the 30th, the day before Halloween.
Please help me. Someone broke in. I heard gunshots. Please help.
When police got the call, we had 2 deputies working. They arrived at the home.
Once the officers arrived at the scene, one went to the back bedroom where CJ was located. And he was dead at the scene.
His was the actual shot to the chest, hit the vital organs. That pretty much took his life from him.
From the other bedroom, they hear a man's voice.
Baby!
He was still moaning.
He was still alive, ironically, after being shot multiple times with a shotgun.
So he managed to pull himself off the bed into the floor, and that's where he was. The only thing he would say was,
My wife knows who did this.
My wife knows who did it. My wife knows who did this. And while he laid there, his body continues to live, but the heart's pumping, and there's nothing there to stop the blood flow.
Homicide Detective Keith Isom is called to the scene.
I probably got there about 5:30, 5:45, still sort of dark. I was told that there was a wife that witnessed it, so we went back and sit down in the police car.
Start from the beginning.
CJ was in his room playing video games or listening to music or something.
Good night, CJ.
Good night.
Good night, Teresa.
We went off to bed. But Julian must have heard something.
Baby doll, I think someone's in the house, and I want you to go to the bathroom and lock the door.
And she says she jumped up, ran to the bathroom.
Then shots. Again and again. I lost count. I waited a long time.
I think she said 30, 45 minutes before she came out.
She came out of the bathroom and looked, and there was Julian in the floor.
And then subsequently called 911.
Please, someone broke in. I heard gunshots. Please help. My husband's on the floor.
And know if he was dead or alive.
So why would your husband say?
My wife knows who did this.
I don't know.
She was adamant that she didn't know.
I was really there to console her and to keep her talking to me. I was going to need her help.
Julian doesn't make it to the hospital alive.
By the time the rescue squad finally got there for him, he passed away because he bled out.
The news is devastating.
And then the police officer proceeds to tell me that Dad and CJ had been murdered in their home. It just didn't feel real at all.
I'm like, they were shot in their home. 10 months before that, my wife lost her oldest brother. And the year before that, she lost her mom. That's 4 people in 2 years' time that she had lost.
This whole experience has to be incredibly devastating for Kathy. She lost her mother, she lost a brother, and now she's lost her other brother and her father. And so on top of all of that grief, she knows that Teresa was there and in the house and hiding, and she has to be wondering, could Teresa have stopped it?
But I also would expect her to be having some feelings of anger and perhaps to be directing those towards Teresa, because lots of times when people experience a loss and they feel there's nothing much they can do about it, they look for somebody they can blame, somebody who's still here and living that they can pin some blame on. And in this case, Teresa would be the obvious target of those kinds of feelings.
This experience has to be incredibly shocking for Teresa as well, and she has to be having some survivor guilt, thinking to herself, if perhaps I hadn't hidden out during this whole invasion, maybe I could have saved them.
The funerals are held 2 days later.
There was a lot of people there. It was a double funeral.
The funeral for Dad and CJ was extremely surreal. Dad and CJ were extremely well loved by the community. I do remember walking up to Dad's casket first, and I remember thinking, what did he do to deserve that? I mean, he served his country with honor. I promise I won't let nobody get by with this, and I'll make sure that they answer for it.
The family looks to the police for those answers.
I thought it was a random killing. Maybe somebody broke in the house to rob them.
You know, we first got there, that Julian's wallet was moved and CJ's wallet was moved, like somebody come in for a burglary trying to get their money.
But something's not right.
There was no damage to the door where it had been kicked or jimmied or pried.
Beyond that, there were no shells in CJ's room, but 5 shells in Julian's room.
It's illogical why you'd only pick up one room and not both. So that sort of made us have an idea that we're probably looking at least 2 people coming in the house. That one would pick up the shells and the other one wouldn't. There had to be 2 shooters. That's all we knew, but we had no idea who we was looking for.
They don't think it's Teresa.
She had no blood on her, dealing with a 12-gauge shotgun. It's nowhere in the house. How's she gonna get rid of it?
But she is the only witness.
So your best source of information is Teresa.
Police believe Teresa must have seen more than she's letting on.
My wife knows who did this.
And they want to find out what.
I had mentioned it to her about taking a polygraph a couple days later, and she said she would.
I just basically said, Teresa, you know, I believe what you're saying, that you didn't have anything to do with the homicide, but we need to clear your name.
My name is Teresa Lewis.
With polygraph, you look for the most powerful, relevant question. And in this case, would be, did you kill your husband?
No, I could never do that.
And you compare that to a comparison question.
She knew something she wasn't telling.
I don't know anything.
Upon review of the charts, and I ran 3 separate charts, I determined that she did in fact have knowledge of Julian Lewis's homicide.
No.
And there's no easy way of saying it. They were executed.
Maybe I do know one person who might have wanted Julian dead.
It's just a question of who done it.
A question on everyone's mind.
He didn't think Julian was good to me.
All 4 of them had a sexual relationship.
I wanted to put my hands around her neck and choke her.
During a polygraph examination, widow Teresa Lewis admits to police she may know who killed her husband Julian and her stepson CJ.
She finally broke down and finally started talking.
I do know someone who might have wanted Julian dead.
Who?
Well, this guy, Matt.
She said his name was Matt, or Matthew, and his last name, she didn't know it. It started with a S.
How do you know him?
I was shopping. And we exchanged numbers. One thing led to another. We started hanging out. And he didn't think Julian was good to me.
She said Julian, had beat her and treated her wrong.
Supposedly he loved her, and he did not like the way that Julian was treating her, and based on that, that he wanted to get rid of him.
You deserve so much better. I can help you be free.
What do you mean?
She gave me enough to tell me that Matthew was who came in and killed him, but that's all I had to go on then.
You know where this Matt lives?
Yeah. I can take you to him.
So I put her in my car, and we went to find out where this guy lived. We took Matt Shannenberger into custody. He didn't want to speak with us. He advised he wanted to talk to an attorney, so we did interview him.
When police search Matthew Schallenberger's home, they hit pay dirt.
Well, inside what they found were some gloves, and they also found 2 12-gauge pump shotguns. The empty shells were left in the bedroom where Julian was murdered. Both shotguns and the empty shells were sent to the crime lab. We knew that those shells were connected with the shotguns.
Matthew had a friend named Rodney.
Really?
Police bring in Matt's roommate, Rodney Fuller, the other suspected shooter.
After about 7 minutes into it, Rodney threw his hands up. He said,
"Okay, here's what happened. The truth."
The truth is that Fuller and Teresa were lovers. But the affair doesn't last.
Her attention changed very quickly from Rodney to Matthew. It sort of bloomed that she had something she could do, someone she could run with, hang out, talk to, while Julian was at work.
Leaving Rodney Fuller on his own. But not for long.
It got to a point she was so involved in Matthew that she took her 16-year-old daughter and used her to sort of involve her in with Rodney, to sort of keep him involved.
He had sex with Rodney Fuller, and Teresa had sex with Mr. Schallenberger.
Teresa was, and the word is diabolical. The physical was there, but to pull him in emotionally, I need help with my husband. Something's got to be done with my husband. He's beaten me. He hurt me. If you care about me, you need to help me.
Are you serious about what you said? About me deserving so much better?
Teresa did not pull a trigger, But in fact, she was the puppeteer.
I got your money.
It was all about the insurance, man.
She knew it was there and she's going to get her hands on it.
According to Rodney Fuller, Teresa's inspiration for the scheme was Jason's death.
Being that after Jason was killed in a car wreck, that's when all of a sudden $200,000 popped in. So all of a sudden they realized there's insurance on these guys.
Julian, like his son Jason, has a policy with the military worth more than $200,000. Teresa gives the men $1,200 to pay for shotguns and ammunition.
She laid everything out. They just followed right along.
The idea is Matthew will carry out the deed alone. But the plan shifts when CJ arrives in Danville unannounced.
But because CJ was home, that threw it into where Rodney now had to do a killing because they had to kill both of them at the same time. They wanted to put them both down.
CJ has a hefty insurance policy too.
Good night, CJ.
Good night.
Good night, Teresa.
So that's when the idea evolved to include both of them.
In the early hours of October 30th, Teresa unlocks the door to the home she shares with Julian.
Julian was asleep in the bed, from my understanding, and CJ was on a video game.
Teresa is supposed to wait up.
Everything, they got pushed so far behind. She figured they wasn't coming, so she'd gone to bed. Here's this man dressed in black screaming, Teresa, Teresa, get up, wake up, get out of the way. That's why Julian said, Teresa, my wife, knows who did this because the shooter called her by her first name, Teresa. And then that's when Matthew began shooting him. They go into Julian's wallet, they pull out $300, and Matthew and Rodney, they split $300. They take the shotguns with them, and they go.
It is very clear that Teresa is a master manipulator. She was able to manipulate these two young men into doing the deed that she didn't want to do herself. In the short period of time that those two were in their relationship, she hid this part of herself very well.
I don't believe that the guys were persuaded at all that Teresa was abused and that there was anything altruistic about what they did. Usually people who are willing to commit murder for hire are not really all that altruistic or worried about helping out somebody else no matter how dire straits they're in. I think sometimes when you get to the end of a story like this, you look back at, for example, Teresa going to church a lot in her early days of her relationship with Julian, and you think, wow, she was really masking the sociopath that she turned out to be at that time. And I don't think that that's necessarily always true. I think what it really shows is just how little there is of a core personality sometimes to the sociopath, and how easily they can sort of change on a dime depending on what their needs and wants and whims are of the moment.
Rodney Fuller and Matthew Schallenberger are convicted of capital murder.
Rodney and Matthew Schallenberger, they were given life without parole.
As for Teresa, she fesses up to the scheme once in custody and is charged with capital murder for hire. But she and her legal team argue the whole plot was Matthew Schallenberger's idea.
He wanted to go to New York to become a hitman.
I can help you be free.
And when he met Teresa, he thought that this was a way that he could make it clear to everyone that he was a real player in the criminal scene.
The jury does not believe Matthew is the mastermind.
She was not the trigger man, but she was surely the one that came up with the plot to have these two innocent people executed.
During sentencing, the judge, he made a statement just how diabolical and evil the plan was and carried out, and none of it would have come to pass if it hadn't been for her orchestrating it and setting everything up and using people. And she was given death.
Teresa Lewis is convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death by lethal injection. On September 23, 2010, she is the first woman executed in the state of Virginia in 98 years.
She got what she deserved.
Teresa took a big part of my soul. Jason and CJ and Dad, Mom, they were my life. They defined who I was. Losing Dad and CJ the way that I did not only took a big piece of my soul, took a big piece of my heart.